Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
After listening to today's news, you'll know. First, Anthropic's $5 billion revenue surge disrupts the AI market as it leapfrogs OpenAI to capture 32% of enterprise clients. We'll analyze why its high-touch enterprise strategy is a turning point and how it could affect competitive dynamics against OpenAI and Microsoft. Second, Ford's CFO predicts AI will replace half of white-collar workers as vulnerable job listings in London plummet by 38%. So we'll discuss why this prediction matters for the future of work and what it means for entry-level career pipelines in major economic hubs. Third, AI travel planners' hallucinations create fake destinations, a flaw impacting 33% of users that experts warn may be unfixable. Today, we'll take a closer look at this critical AI flaw and its implications for user safety and the future of travel tech platforms. Fourth, GM CFO predicts EV demand will drop precipitously as US incentives end, forcing a strategic pivot back to profitable hybrids. We'll explore how this policy shift could transform the US auto market and what it signals for automakers' electric vehicle roadmaps. Fifth, France's state investment bank chief warns Europe is being doubly colonized by US tech as its own investors fuel Silicon Valley's lead. We'll analyze why this capital flight is a turning point for Europe and how it could affect its ability to build competitive AI ecosystems. Let's start with a single statistic that might just change your entire perspective on one AI company. Anthropic's revenue run rate has exploded from $87 million to a staggering $5 billion in less than a year. Now, for those not familiar with startup jargon, a run rate basically takes current revenue and projects it out for a full year. So the thing is, Anthropic went from a promising company to an absolute juggernaut in just a few months. And the reason why is a global firestorm of demand. Believe it or not, nearly 80% of activity for its AI model, Claude, now comes from outside the United States. This isn't a case of a massive international sales team pushing a product. It's actually a phenomenon known as organic pull, where customers are actively seeking out Anthropic solutions before the company even has a local office. The company's chief commercial officer admitted they have a very, very significant business in international markets where, until recently, they had no major physical presence. But this raises a huge question. How does a US-trained AI truly adapt to the deep cultural context of places like Japan, Korea, or India? It's not just about translation. Research shows that AI models can accidentally impose Western norms. For example, one study found that Japanese users tend to trust AI more than Americans do, a difference rooted in deep cultural attitudes toward technology. Getting that right is the key to global success. A while back, we analysed OpenAI's infrastructure power play, the $22.4 billion CoreWeave partnership, stacked on top of its Databricks tie-up to reduce dependence on any single gatekeeper, even with Microsoft in the mix. That deal kept growing, moving from roughly $11.9 billion then another $4 billion, and most recently a fresh $6.5 billion injection, a clear signal that OpenAI is fortifying supply at the racks and power level. What really brought this to a head was the next development, Anthropic attacking from a different angle. This global surge is now fueling a direct assault on its biggest rivals, OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google. Anthropic is playing a different game. While Microsoft and Google are bundling AI into their existing software, Anthropic is building what you could call AI SWAT teams. Anthropic just announced it will triple its international workforce and expand its applied AI team fivefold in 2025, opening a new front in the AI wars. This high-touch consultative approach is a big reason why, according to a recent report from Menlo Ventures, Anthropic has already captured 32% of the enterprise market for large language models, leapfrogging OpenAI's 25%. And the results for its clients are staggering. Pharmaceutical giant Novo Nordisk used Claude to compress a 3-month analysis phase into just a few days. The world's largest sovereign wealth fund, Norges Bank, has already saved 213,000 hours. And the Commonwealth Bank of Australia slashed scam losses by 50%. Now, it's important to be clear-eyed here. These incredible wins are often in very narrow, easily optimized tasks, not always a systemic business transformation overnight. The challenge for companies is figuring out how to replicate these specific successes across their entire organization. if that was just the appetizer, the main course is just being served. A new product, Claude Code, launched just in May, is already a $500 million business with usage up tenfold in only 3 months. One executive called it one of the fastest growing products that's ever been launched. Anthropic is betting that companies want more than just an AI add-on. Its strategy is to provide a pure play AI experience, not just a feature wrapped inside legacy software from Microsoft or Google. And remember, while OpenAI has been shoring up its compute backbone through that CoreWeave expansion and related diversification, Anthropic's counter is differentiation at the go-to-market and services layer. Precisely why the plan to triple its international footprint and 5x applied AI matters. But this strategy has another layer most people are missing. Anthropic is positioning itself to be the AI partner for entire nations seeking what's called sovereign AI. They've already struck a deal with the US government to provide their AI models across all federal agencies and are even developing specialized models for classified national security work. This isn't just about business software anymore. It's about powering the core services of a country. And as one executive made clear, for Anthropic, enterprise isn't just one part of their business, it's the entire focus. We were just talking about the explosive growth in the AI industry, but that growth comes with some serious questions about the future of work. Now, we're getting a stark warning from a very traditional industry. The chief executive of Ford just went on the record with a prediction that's sending shockwaves through the labour market. Artificial intelligence will replace, quote, literally half of all white-collar workers. This statement from a major industrial leader presents a fascinating duality for our future. On one side, you have the replacement theory, where AI is seen as a tool to cut headcount and labour costs. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, has been very open about this, even questioning if the existing workforce can truly be upskilled. On the other, you have the augmentation theory, championed by companies like Snap Incorporated, who argue AI will just lead to an exponential increase in productivity with the same number of people. We're seeing this split in real time as industries with routine tasks lean towards replacement, while creative sectors use AI to boost existing teams. That's not a prediction from a sci-fi movie. New data shows the trend may already be starting. In London alone, research suggests nearly 1 million jobs could be transformed by AI. And there's a specific reason we're focusing on London. You could call it the canary in the coal mine for the global service economy. Its economy is so heavily concentrated in finance, insurance, and professional services, exactly the sectors where jobs are most exposed to. According to UK government analysis, what happens in London could be a preview for other major cities. The number of job ads for roles vulnerable to automation has already plunged by 38% compared to 3 years ago. But that number doesn't just represent jobs disappearing today. It points to a much deeper problem: the collapse of the entire entry-level career pipeline. Think about it. These vulnerable jobs are often the first rung on the career ladder where future leaders get their foundational experience. With research from the World Economic Forum showing I could replace over half the tasks for roles like market research analysts. The big unanswered question is, how do you develop tomorrow's leaders if they never get their start today? The first wave is targeting roles like the 200,000 telemarketers and 150,000 bookkeepers in the city. The research also reveals a stark divide, identifying women as being at a higher risk because they occupy more of the roles AI could impact. This isn't a coincidence. It's a direct consequence of historical gender roles that have funneled women into administrative and clerical positions. The data is shocking. One study found that in the United States, nearly 79% of employed women work in roles with high potential for automation compared to just 58% of men. The danger is that I could act as a gender disparity amplifier, potentially widening the pay gap if we don't address this head on. However, inside one of the UK's largest institutions, the NHS, a completely different reality is unfolding. At one hospital, a robot now dispenses 400,000 items of medication per year. AI analyses the data to predict demand, ensuring vital medicines are in the right place at the right time. The chief pharmacist there says it's not about replacing people. It makes their work more efficient and, critically, a lot safer for patients. A digital health leader for the trust was even more direct, stating AI is not there to take jobs, but to take over mundane, repetitive tasks, allowing them to upskill staff. There is, she says, plenty of work to do in the NHS. Now, That word upskill sounds like the perfect solution, right? But let's take a reality check. Upskilling an entire workforce is a monumental challenge. The UK government, for example, has already committed over £100 million to AI skills development. But at the same time, reports show that around 10 million workers in the UK still lack essential digital skills. So when we talk about retraining hundreds of thousands of people in a city like London, the logistical and financial questions are huge with no clear, scalable model yet. This sets up the central battle for the future of work. On one side, leaders like the CEO of Ford and companies like Amazon and JP Morgan predict massive job disruption. On the other, tech insiders and organisations like the NHS argue AI will simply create an exponential increase in productivity. The stage is now set for a transformation where the line between a helpful tool and an outright replacement is being drawn. Speaking of the downsides of AI, it's not just jobs that are at risk. When AI gets things wrong in the real world, the consequences can be, well, a lot more immediate. Now, get this. 2 tourists in Peru were sent on a solo hike to a place that doesn't exist. An AI travel planner invented a destination called the Sacred Canyon of Humante, took their money, and directed them to a random rural road with no guide. A local trek founder who found them said the mistake could have been fatal, warning that at that altitude, you can find yourself without oxygen and no phone signal. Interestingly enough, this story highlights a counter movement that's emerging. As AI generates more fake travel content, local guides are creating a premium for what they call verified human experiences. The guide who found those lost tourists is the perfect example. He represents the real, authentic knowledge that AI is failing to replicate. It's becoming an arms race for authenticity. A while back, we talked about Amazon rolling out an AI agent that takes actions for sellers. Different industry, same pattern. When AI steps between people and the real world, the downside of a bad decision goes from annoying to dangerous fast, and the value of trusted human expertise shoots up. This wasn't an isolated glitch either. It's a dangerous new trend for the 30% of international travelers now using AI for trip planning. A stunning 33% of those who used AI reported that it fed them outright false information. This goes beyond individual bad trips. It's about how AI could reshape entire local economies. Think about how navigation apps can suddenly flood a quiet town with traffic. AI travel planners could do the same, systematically directing thousands of travelers to a few algorithm-approved spots while ignoring others, creating over-tourism in some areas and economic drought in others. Continuing our last discussion about platform lock-in, this is how those AI golden handcuffs tighten for travelers too. The more you outsource discovery to a single AI, the more you lose the local know-how that keeps trips resilient, and the harder it becomes to switch when the algorithm is clearly wrong. The examples are piling up. One couple used ChatGPT to plan a sunset hike in Japan. The AI gave them the wrong closing time for the last cable car down, leaving them stranded on top of a mountain after dark. Another AI tool, Layla, briefly told users there was an Eiffel Tower in Beijing. So what is going on? Experts call it hallucination. AI like ChatGPT doesn't know what's true. It's designed to string words together that sound realistic. It can't tell the difference between a city walk and a dangerous mountain climb, and it presents its fabrications with the same confidence as facts. Essentially, the AI is learning from the messy internet, outdated blogs, fake reviews, and even other AI-generated content. It's a digital diet of junk food, leading to these unreliable recommendations. But this is where the situation takes a more complex turn. This isn't just a bug that can be fixed. Experts, including Google CEO Sundar Pichai, have stated that these hallucinations may be an inherent unfixable feature of large language models. The technology is designed to make things up. Now, that sounds final, but there's a key distinction to be made. There's a difference between a general purpose AI like ChatGPT and specialized travel apps. Many of these dedicated apps use a system called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. It basically forces the AI to first retrieve information from a trusted, curated database like real-time flight schedules or verified hotel listings, and then use that data to build its answer. It grounds the AI in reality, making it far more reliable. And the only way to protect yourself is to assume it might be lying. This brings up a huge question. If these AI mistakes are an inherent flaw, who is legally and ethically responsible when something goes wrong? Right now, most companies have disclaimers that you shouldn't rely on the information But as more people face real-world consequences, the debate over who is liable is just getting started. We previously analysed this in another context. When Amazon's action-taking AI agent makes decisions for sellers, legal scholars suggested that as a user's control goes down, responsibility could shift toward the company. The same unresolved questions apply here. If travel AIs evolve from recommenders into agents that book and route on our behalf, those liability lines will only get sharper. From the unpredictable world of AI, let's shift to the equally volatile auto market. The chief financial officer of General Motors just went on the record with a forecast that caught everyone by surprise. He expects electric vehicle demand is going to, in his words, drop off pretty precipitously. This warning comes at the exact moment the EV market is supposed to be celebrating. Sales just hit a record high, grabbing a record 10% market share in the third quarter. But that boom was fueled by a deadline. The federal incentive of up to $7,500 for a new EV is now gone. However, if you zoom out, you'll see the incentive isn't entirely gone. It has just fundamentally changed. What was a simple green policy has morphed into an industrial policy to encourage American manufacturing. The new rules, part of the Inflation Reduction Act, are incredibly strict. To get the full credit, a vehicle must be assembled in North America, and its battery components can't come from a foreign entity of concern like China. This disqualifies many popular models and forces automakers to rethink their supply chains. A while back, we talked about how BYD can sell ultra-low-cost models overseas thanks to deep vertical integration. Under these FEOC restrictions, many of those bargain builds won't qualify for credits here. And the question everyone is asking is, what happens now? Was the demand real, or was it just a discount? We've actually seen this movie before in other countries. When places like China and Norway pulled back on subsidies, they saw a temporary dip in sales. But then the market stabilized and growth returned. This suggests that while subsidies can kickstart a market, real consumer demand eventually takes over. The big question for the US is whether our market is mature enough for that to happen here. The CFO of GM isn't alone. The CEO of Hyundai Motor admits they now expect the EV market will not grow as much as they thought. Even Tesla CEO Elon Musk has warned of a few rough quarters ahead. A while back, we also talked about Musk's political forays in Europe triggering a bout of economic patriotism. That was a brand story overseas. Today's update is a policy-driven demand test at home. This isn't just talk. The fallout is already starting. Honda just confirmed it's ending US production of its Acura ZDX electric crossover. GM is cutting production shifts and slowing its EV rollout. Volkswagen, Porsche, and Rivian have all announced cuts or changes to their EV plans. This isn't just about hitting the brakes, it's a strategic pivot. While they slow down their all-electric plans, they're ramping up production of hybrid vehicles. Why? Because hybrids are profitable right now. Ford's EV division, for example, reported a staggering loss of over $100,000 for every single EV it sold in one quarter. For them, this is about surviving this EV winter by selling the hybrids that customers are buying today. Before the incentives expired, the market was in a frenzy, with automakers piling on their own discounts, with the average EV incentive spend hitting more than $9,000. They were doing whatever it took to move cars off the lot. Now that support is gone, and another storm is making things worse, the used EV market. Aggressive price cuts on new Teslas have created a depreciation tsunami. Used EV prices have fallen 6 times faster than gas-powered cars. When a buyer sees a 3-year-old model selling for 30% less, it makes them terrified to buy a new one. This is a massive blow to confidence. We previously noted that buyers now see credible alternatives from Hyundai to BYD. When options multiply, price cuts train shoppers to wait, amplifying that depreciation loop. According to one senior fellow at Harvard University, pulling away these policy levers will absolutely slow the growth of EVs. The industry spent billions betting on an electric future, but with the government money gone, the arrival of truly affordable models is now critical to reshaping the entire market. The biggest hurdle is the battery, which can be half the car's cost. Companies like Chinese automaker BYD have mastered this by building everything in-house. US automakers, on the other hand, are still struggling to build efficient consolidated platforms. Until they solve that puzzle, the dream of a cheap American EV will remain just that, a dream. We were just talking about how US industrial policy is reshaping its domestic EV market. Well, across the Atlantic, there's a growing fear about American influence in a totally different sector. The head of France's state investment bank just warned that Europe is being, quote, doubly colonized. In a grim picture painted for the continent, Nicolas Dufocq, chief of Biprince, says Europe is being overcome by Chinese industry and US technology. He stated bluntly, "I'm sorry to be radical in my vision, but we are doubly colonized, industrially colonized by the Chinese, digitally colonized by the US. It's not in the future. The consequences are now." You know, using a word like colonize coming from a high-ranking French official is not an accident. This kind of rhetoric has real-world consequences, impacting delicate negotiations between Europe and the US on everything from AI regulation to data privacy. It signals a deep frustration and a push for what they call digital sovereignty. But here's the twist. The problem isn't a lack of money. The core of the problem, he says, is Europe's own massive pool of savings. European investors are so risk-averse that they pour their money straight into the US market instead of backing their own innovators. Europe's own savings are funding its competition. What really brought this to a head is the massive disparity in AI investment. Even when Europe produces a champion like France's own AI startup Mistral, the scale of the problem becomes clear. While Mistral has raised impressive funds, a recent analysis shows that European AI companies raised about $3.2 billion. In that same period, American AI companies raised over $36 billion. The US isn't just winning, it's playing a different game, partly funded by European money. And the numbers back this up in a big way. Venture-backed companies in the United States raised nearly 4 times as much capital as their peers in Europe. In one telling example, a prominent UK venture capital firm, 20VC, raised between $800 and $850 million. A staggering $750 million of that came from the US. The founder noted that when they make money for their investors, almost all of it will go right back to America. It all comes down to what one expert called a risk-off mindset in Europe versus a risk-on mindset in America. This isn't just about a cultural mindset, though. There are massive structural barriers in Europe that make it harder to invest in high-risk tech. For example, in the United States, a 1979 reform to a law called ERISA made it much easier for huge American pension funds to pour money into venture capital. In Europe, those same pension funds often face strict regulations limiting how much they can invest in high-risk assets. So it's not just that they don't want to, in many cases they can't. The Bprance chief sarcastically warned that without a cultural shift, Europe will just, quote, continue to invest in tourism, wine, real estate, and US tech. On top of the regulations, Europe's financial markets are incredibly fragmented. The entire European Union has around 35 different stock exchanges, while the US has just 3 main ones. That fragmentation makes it much harder for a startup to get big, get liquid, and attract those massive investment rounds. It's a system that structurally favors safer, smaller bets. The final warning is stark. State intervention isn't enough. Without a fundamental change in how Europe invests its own capital, it will continue to finance its own economic decline.
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.